Thank you for braving the wind. Boy, the wind here is intense, and this is even intense for Cheyenne, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And you're hardy folk here to deal with it all the time, but this is intense. And how appropriate that we do have a wind instrument as our soloist. Yes. We're very, very pleased and honored to have as our wonderful tuba soloist Gene Pokorny coming back to Cheyenne after 22 years when he was a soloist here. Please welcome Gene Pokorny. And in a moment we'll bring up another guest and explain why there's a mysterious third chair. So I thought it'd be nice to just start with Gene up here on stage the whole time maybe, and focus a little bit more on his part in the concert tomorrow night. Before I do want to mention, we do have a videographer back there who wanted to see if it was okay for him to take video of you all in today's session. I don't know if anybody's uncomfortable with that. Jason, how do you want to handle that?
If you're not comfortable, I won't include them.
Okay, just raise your hand if you don't want to be included in a video. There's one person over here. Yeah. All right, great. Now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, let me also just say that, we have been on a journey, an exploration all season long of American voices of these American composers in celebration and anticipation of our country's 250th. And it's been exciting to hear the variety of American music. And I feel like these pieces and these composers and this music are telling us something about who we are as a country, as individuals, and they're reminding us maybe about how our country is great and why it's great. And I hope that you're getting some of that from the performances that we've been doing for you all season long. This concert will have a number of different American voices on it, from different time periods, and that's going to be pretty neat. We'll have, in a way, one of the greatest pieces that's now a classic of American music, Bernstein's Symphonic Dances from West Side Story. You can't get more American and iconic than West Side Story. And certainly there's a lot to tell you about that piece. But then we also have, as you fast forward a little bit, we have, and that, of course, music from the 1950s. From the 1960s, we have the Mission Impossible theme, written by Lalo Schifrin, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Then in the 1980s, we have a piece by a wonderful woman composer, Ellen Taft-Zwillig. She was the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize in Music in 1984, which was the year that this piece was written. She got the award for her Symphony No. 1, though, not the piece that we're doing. We're doing a piece called Celebration of hers. That's the opening of our concert. And it was written for the opening of a new concert hall with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. It was written in a way to sort of challenge that orchestra and show off the acoustics of the hall. The composer wanted it to be almost like a concerto for orchestra, meaning that everybody in the orchestra has something hard to play. Many of them are featured in solos, actually. Many solos in the piece. And it's a short 8-minute piece, but it goes through the orchestra and kind of shows off all the incredible palette of colors, of instrumental colors that an orchestra can give. And so we have that piece from the 1980s, and then you fast forward and we have a couple of pieces from more recent times. The Tuba Concerto by Lalo Schifrin, the same composer who wrote Mission Impossible, and this piece was just written less than 10 years ago, and written for our esteemed friend here, Gene Pokorny. And then we have a short piece, just a 4-minute little piece, the overture to the opera Omar, which won the Pulitzer Prize. The opera itself won the Pulitzer Prize in 2023, just a few years ago. And this is an important new opera by a team of composers, Michael Abels and Rhiannon Giddens. And so we have some important younger voices joining these sort of esteemed older voices like Bernstein and Zwillig. By the way, Zwillig is still alive. I think she's 86 maybe now. Still based in Florida, where she's been for a lot of her career. Schifrin unfortunately passed away just last summer. And I know that you were close with him, Gene. Maybe we can transition into that and how the tuba concerto came to be, and how you were approached by Lalo Schifrin and some of that, if you don't mind. welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm very pleased to be back in Cheyenne.
couple of reasons. Certainly because of the great orchestra that I remember from back when I was last year. It was around 2004, but also because I'm a foamer. I'm a rail fan, and I'm hopeless. Went to the steam shop this morning and cried my eyes out. So.
Oh, really?
But regarding the tuba concerto, I was just walking around the house one day and the phone rang, and I picked up the phone. Hello, may I speak with Chief Pokorny? Okay, here comes the Verizon commercial. I said, listen, my name is Lalo Schifrin. Maybe you've heard of me. And I said, well, is the Titanic overdue? I mean, of course. Everybody knows Lalo Schifrin. I mean, Mission Impossible and the theme and these movies.
Cool Hand Luke, Maddox.
Yeah. Mannix, the TV show, and Bullet, you know, the famous chase scene in San Francisco with Steve McQueen and all that. So of course, he says, well, I'm thinking I should write a tuba concerto, and people say I should write it for you. I said, well, that's an honor and a half, no kidding. I'd love to. And so we started talking, communicating, and I sent him some recordings that I had done, and music that I played, and he kind of got the idea of what I was capable of, and probably a little better idea of what I was not capable of. He knew what the limits were, and he wrote this piece. It's kind of in a neo-baroque style, but it's really kind of a jazzy little piece, and so that became the start of everything, as far as the tuba concerto.
And then it sounds like it developed into a lovely friendship over the years that you were, maybe workshopping the piece with him and then premiering it in California. With several different orchestras in California, actually, but the premiere was in Redlands, is that right?
In Redlands, California, yeah.
And then there was a time when you were on tour with the Chicago Symphony and played at Disney Hall in LA, and he came and met you back at the intermission. This was when he was still writing the piece, right?
Right.
Tell us about that.
He was still writing the piece, and he was quite mobile at the time. We met at intermission, and it was great to see him because, I mean, here's this picture of this man that I have so many photographs of, and here he was an alive person. So we had a very lovely conversation, he and his wife Donna, and then the piece got finished, and he came out to the premiere in Redlands, California, and things kind of progressed from there. It was lovely. It was lovely to meet him, and we had conversations about the music. I asked him how Mission Impossible came, and he was very open about that. There's an interesting story there, which I can share tomorrow or share today.
You can share both if you want.
Okay. Well, you all know the Mission Impossible thing, right? Boom, 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 boom. And I said, well, how did you write it? How did you come up with something like this? Because it's in 5/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how.
It's an unusual. It's unusual.
It's unusual. Usually things are in 4 or in 3 or something. And he said, well, it's just simple blues. It's a simple blues progression. He says the problem was the rhythmic motif. What was I going to do? And he said, Morse code. And so you take the acronym Mission Impossible, MI. And for you, some of you who have been in the military, the Morse code for M is what? Dash, dash. And the Morse code for I is what? Dot, dot. You put them together, you repeat them, dash, dash, dot, dot, dash, dash, dot, dot, dash. And that's how we came up with that. And if you go to Google Earth and look at 710 Hillcrest Road in Beverly Hills, you can see what royalties of that tune bought Lalo Schifrin.
That's where he lived, in Beverly Hills?
Yeah.
All you have to say is Beverly Hills, that says it all right there, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, I can hardly wait to share the story tomorrow.
Yes.
You guys get the previews.
Well, we are very fortunate that you approached us a few years ago, having done this premiere with a few orchestras of the tuba concerto in California, he was given the great honor to be able to perform it with the Chicago Symphony, his own orchestra, as I didn't mention yet, but of course he is the tubist of the Chicago Symphony and has been in that position for quite some time. Bravo. The Chicago Symphony, of course, has a legendary brass section, and he is the grounding and a critical part of that legendary brass section. And so he was not only given the honor to perform it at the Chicago Symphony with their esteemed music director, Riccardo Muti, but it was a special concert. Tell us about that. Why that particular concert was also special?
It was near the end of Riccardo Muti's tenure as music director of the orchestra. And so it was, in fact, it may have been.
I think it was his last
concert.
concert.
I think it was his last concert. So to be a part of his crowning last season was something else. So, and to link in the time that he, the fact that Lalo Schifrin wrote this music, and Lalo Schifrin has some type of a connection with the Chicago Symphony, because Lalo Schifrin, when he was growing up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, he took lessons, piano lessons, from Daniel Barenboim's father. Daniel Barenboim was the music director of the Chicago Symphony before Muti was. So here's this intertwined connection.
Yeah.
And so it has this circuitous route of connection with the Chicago Symphony.
I love that. Now at that concert, just like you'll do tomorrow night with us, you performed the Schifrin Concerto, and then you brought out Mission Impossible as an encore, as sort of a creative new version for orchestra and tuba solo. Was that sort of sanctioned by Mr. Schifrin, Maestro Schifrin?
I think he thought it was, well, yes. Because everybody does. I mean, you hear Mission Impossible for, everything from, selling cars to selling fertilizer, I mean, it's just, they use it for everything,
Well, and then a whole new generation of people know that theme because in addition to the TV show from the 60s and 70s, of course it was a remake as a movie with Tom Cruise, and that franchise has been going on for I think 20 years now. They just don't know how to end it. Believe me, I watched, as part of my studying for this weekend's concert, I watched the last Mission Impossible movie. All the way through it, I kept saying to my fiance, why are we watching this? It's so bad. Sorry. Uh-oh, I'm on record for being critical of it. It was fun, but the music was great. Now, this is our opportunity to bring up another guest. Who's not a guest. He's a family member of the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. He's our principal tubist, Alan Harvey. You've heard him perform with the orchestra for many years as the bass and grounding of our orchestra, and it's delightful that Gene, in his generosity and great spirit, invited Alan to join him in playing the Mission Impossible as a sort of concerto for two tubas and orchestra. Please welcome our Cheyenne Symphony principal tuba, Alan Harvey. In addition to his position with the Cheyenne Symphony, Alan is on the faculty at UW over in Laramie, and you arranged a special visit with Gene yesterday. Tell us a little bit about that and how long you've been with the symphony and just your impressions of this week so far.
It's been a terrific week so far. I've been with the orchestra, originally brought into the family by Maestro William. I guess it's been maybe 10, 11, 12 years. It's been a long time. But frequently when we would be at an audition committee or something together, he would say, I'm still in touch with Gene Pokorny. Someday it's going to happen. It's been a few years in the works, I think. Yeah. And now it has happened. And when we knew it was going to happen, I got in touch with Gene promptly to see if he would be willing to come and visit us over in Laramie. And he spent quite a day yesterday. I want to thank him again.
Did you have power all day yesterday at the university?
I just couldn't stay out of the way.
Okay, we lost power in many parts of Cheyenne yesterday. I was worried about your involvement over at UW.
Things were okay. It wasn't quite as bad over there as it was up the hill.
Yes.
But he spent quite a day with us yesterday. Lovely recital during our convocation hour. and then stay to work with our kids in a masterclass situation and a couple of extra lessons even on the side.
Yeah.
So fantastic, thanks again.
So what does it mean as a tuba player to be on stage with Gene Pokorny? Tell us a little bit about what that means for somebody like you.
It's quite an honor. It's
For all of us.
yeah, for all of us. A number of years, as you mentioned, as the bedrock of the Chicago brass section sound. So to be able to be a part of that and have him here with us, it really is a great honor. It's a great job.
Yeah. Well, I'm also so excited that we get to bring you forward and put you in the spotlight as well for the Mission Impossible.
Yeah. So it's soon after the things were taking shape, and then we're like, well, actually, there's this encore piece. Sometimes we set it up for the two tubas together, and I guess there's room up there somewhere for both of us side by side.
Yes.
And again, quite an honor to do that. So thank you.
I have a logistical question. So, because Gene was traveling here, he took a flight here, he had to bring this particular tuba, and many of our friends here might not realize that tuba players probably own, what, 4, 3, 5 tubas? Because there are so, more even, but a minimum of, right? I mean, you've got the big double B flat. Tell us a little bit about. Okay, my logistical question is, when you play together in the Mission Impossible, will you play the same size tuba as Gene? I know he was limited, perhaps because of transportation, to bring one of his smaller instruments. Are you going to bring like one of your big ones out on stage, or how's that going to work? Do you want to match? Tell us about that.
Basically, yes, trying to match.
Okay.
Normally, when the whole group is together, I have a larger instrument in the background.
So, like when you're playing the West Side Story, which one are you using for that?
That'll be the big silver, for you guys, the big silver tuba. that you see pretty often. But knowing that this tuba was a little bit smaller and being more of a soloistic voice,
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring a tuba. It's about the same size as this one.
Okay. So I was wrong in how many tuba instruments the tubist really has. A professional tubist. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. Either one of you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, there's, in the family of tuba, there's the contrabass tuba, which can be pitched in double B flat or double C. That's the instrument that Alan's going to be playing tomorrow night. And then there's the bass tuba, which is pitched in F or E flat. This is an F tuba, so I'll be playing this for the Lalo Schifrin Concerto and for the Mission Impossible. Then there's the tenor tuba, which you probably know as the euphonium or baritone horn, and that's a slightly smaller instrument. And then you can get into the C French tuba, which plays the beadle movement and pictures at an exhibition. And that's how we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty. But this is the tuba that I've chosen to play for the Lalo Schifrin Concerto because the tessitura, that is to say the low notes and the high notes, are more geared to the upper register of the tuba. I mean, it's not a really bass type of instrument. It's kind of in the middle. It's a little bit easier to hit some of the notes in the middle register and the upper register, and there's some stuff here that kind of lends to that. So.
And that's no. Go ahead. I can speak. That's okay here. Yeah. I mean, when as a composer writing a concerto for a solo instrument, of course you want to feature that instrument playing the melody. And of course, you might not have thought about this carefully, but if you are playing a melody, usually it's the top voice. Not always, but usually it is a top voice with accompaniment being below it, which is just something natural. It's part of our human physiology that we hear what's on top perhaps a little clearer. And that's why in this tuba concerto, Schifrin has given Gene a very high part often. Sometimes you do get really down low. It's fun to hear. It's really great.
Yeah, it is fun to hear, but just imagining, if you've ever heard any jazz combos or anything, whenever there's a bass solo, there's not very many instruments that accompany it because it's so hard to hear the bass line. You might hear a hi-hat cymbal playing with the double bass, but not much more because it can get really crowded in that lower register.
Yeah, exactly. And so I gotta ask you this question. I'm sorry to put you on the spot about this, but do either one of you, in the collection of all the tubas that you own, do either one of you own a sousaphone?
one in my
Garage.
in my arsenal.
Of course, the sousaphone being the one that wraps around you for the marching, right? Yeah.
Eventually, I hope it will go to the Smithsonian
Oh.
because it belonged to a fellow by the name of David Red Lehr, Lehr. And this guy was one of the most incredible jazz sousaphone players anywhere. He lived in a little town called New Athens, Illinois. He was a butcher by trade, and he played sousaphone. He had no idea what the tuba could not do. And his idea for how to play the sousaphone was to try to imitate Pete Fountain. Pete Fountain was a clarinet player. That's what he was trying to do with the sousaphone. And for the most part, he managed to do it. And anyway, the sousaphone that I have, eventually I hope I'll get a response from the Smithsonian to try to get it in there, because this was his sousaphone, and he was absolutely one of the most remarkable musicians I ever ran into.
Wow, that's fantastic.
He's
It's
a
coming
good,
from you. That says
good
a
old
ton.
boy from New Athens, Illinois. He's just out there trick shooting, throwing cabbages up in the air with a rifle, just for fun, and then playing this incredible jazz at night playing a legato that I've never heard anybody get close to.
And then he gave you that instrument. That means a lot. Yeah.
Well, his daughter.
His daughter,
After
yeah.
he moved along. So.
Oh. Now, because the tuba doesn't often get the spotlight, let's just focus a little bit more on the instrument and the history of the instrument a little bit more. And you can both certainly answer this, but why is it that there weren't more tuba concertos earlier on? Was the Vaughan Williams one of the first? And when did the instrument itself become developed enough to maybe have a starring role as a solo instrument? And what are the antecedents? Because there are some unusual instruments that we see in some of the scores for in some of Mendelssohn and others that have unusual names that were the antecedents of a tuba. Tell us a little just briefly about the history and how we came to have this awesome instrument. I'll give you both of them.
I think the patent for the tuba was in 1840. I think that's when it was, 1840, which was, just to give it perspective, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony was around 1827. He died in 1827. And there were some other pre-tuba types of instruments, like a serpent and an ophicleide. You can look these instruments up. They almost look as bad as they sound. When you think that Symphony Fantastique was just written by Berlioz, was written just a few years after Beethoven's Ninth, it's kind of amazing. But anyway, he wrote for two ophicleides. This is just before the tuba was invented. Finally, a fellow by the name of Adolf Sax, he was important for some other reason.
He invented an instrument that bears his name. Yes.
Interesting. But he invented the valve, which eventually came, and it finally came into developed into a tuba, and the instrument started to be used as a low reed brass instrument at the bottom of the orchestra, of the brass section. But because of what you did mention, that the low frequencies get so little attention because you just don't hear them that well. Nobody really stuck around to write any tuba concertos per se until starting around 1950 or so. Some pieces were coming out. Beelzebub, some more tongue-in-cheek pieces than anything.
Tubby the tuba.
Tubby the tuba by George Kleinsinger and finally they started to get some serious pieces by Hindemith, and then of course Ralph Vaughan Williams wrote this tuba concerto. 58 was it? I think it was 1958.
I didn't know it was that late, actually. I thought it was earlier. That's interesting.
So he was in his 80s. Vaughan Williams was in his 80s when he wrote that piece. But and then since about 1971, 73, there's been big explosion of solo pieces that have been written for the instrument, including this Lalo Schifrin piece.
Yeah, and Lalo was in his 90s maybe when he wrote it, or late 80s when he
Yeah.
wrote it. Yeah, it's amazing. Yes, so that's interesting about Adolph Sax, because when you first mentioned 1840, the first thing I thought of was, didn't Adolph Sax invent the saxophone in 1844? And so you mentioned he was partly responsible for the valves, and this was before he actually invented the saxophone. So he was on his way to building that.
Because of the communication problem, well, their communication wasn't that swift before the telegraph and before a lot of other things. And so, say for instance, when Berlioz would go from one town to another, the composer Hector Berlioz, he would arrive in these towns to have his music played. He'd run into the orchestra and find out, well, this particular orchestra has one serpent, so he'd have to take whatever low part and transpose it for the serpent. Then he'd go to the next town. Oh, well, they have two alphaclides. Well, all right, so he's spending the afternoon rewriting these low parts so that it would work for these particular instruments. And then finally, there were some tubas that came, but every time, I mean, it took a while for the word to spread that, oh, we should write we should go ahead and adapt our music for this particular instrument as the words start to get around.
Yes, right. And a little bit more about your own personal lives and where you are in your journey and where you're from originally, maybe other interests that you have, other positions that you have, things like that nature. Alan, we'll start with you. Because, these friends have seen and heard you perform with us for these 10 or 12 years. Yeah, the guy in the corner, sometimes with that giant nuclear missile silo as a mute. But tell us a little more about your background.
And we will see the mute this weekend.
The tuba mute is awesome. When you see him lift it up, it does look like a warhead.
Yeah. So my background, I started out in music, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and about 22 years ago, I first moved to the Boulder area to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering. My sister was working for the public health department here in Cheyenne, and she got a hold of me and she said, there's a guy, I think he's a tuba guy, and he's coming from Chicago. His name is Gene. And I said, oh, we're going to this concert. So I had never heard the orchestra before, or any of that, and I literally kind of given up the tuba to pursue a technical degree. And came up here and walked into the beautiful Civic Center and heard the great orchestra and the great Gene Pokorny. We met for a few minutes after the concert. And it kind of was an inspiration for me to, even though I was getting it up, to get back into it as my degree was finishing. And then for me, with the other part of the magic this weekend is having it come full circle that now this is my musical home at the same Civic Center and another tuba concerto. And then being able to jump out on stage for a few minutes at the end.
Wonderful.
It's amazing.
That's so great. Did you even know that you were part of his returning to the tuba story?
Not until now.
That's amazing. Wow. And so, how long have you been at UW?
And so the first major regional position I had here was with Cheyenne, and I'm also principal in Casper at the Wyoming Symphony, and the association there led me to meet all the other folks as well, and that has become a position that it's an adjunct position over at the university, and that's been about 10 years as well. It all happened pretty quickly. Drove a lot of miles. I still do live down in North Denver. So,
Wow.
but I love, if it's not this windy, I'm okay, but I love the drive to come up.
May I ask, is your sister still in Cheyenne?
She is not.
Oh, okay.
She lives close to me now.
Oh, that's nice. That's great. She's wonderful. Great. We're so lucky to have you, Alan.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You do such a great job. Gene, tell us about you, because you're famous for being in the Chicago Symphony, but that wasn't your first orchestra appointment, too. And also, where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit about this.
I grew up in Downey, California, which is a little town about 11 miles southeast of downtown LA. I grew up in a trailer park.
I'm also from LA. We're like,
Yeah.
and I have a relative who lived in Downey. My godfather, actually, my dad's cousin. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's cool. I lived about a quarter-mile away from North American Aviation, which turned into North American Rockwell, which turned into Rockwell International, which is where they built the Apollo spacecraft. My junior high school, in fact, was right across the street from North American Rockwell, and occasionally you could see them test the heat shields by dropping these spacecraft into this big pool of water, you know, and just seeing if this spacecraft would actually not
Break up.
Break up, you know. So that was big. Anyway, but growing up around there, and we had a really sad music education program in Downey. And one thing I want to do, I was going to be a band director, and I was going to be the best band director, and I was going to come back to Downey and show these people how it's really supposed to be. Really got into it. And then I went to the University of Redlands, and eventually ended up going to a concert on May 13th, 1973. Obviously a date that I'll never forget. And I happened to hear an orchestra down in San Diego. It was from the Midwest. They did a piece by Mozart, and they did a piece by a guy named Mahler. And that was it. It was all. It happened to be the Chicago Symphony on tour.
Oh, that's
And,
amazing. With Schulte.
With Schulte, and it was Mahler Fifth Symphony, and I'll never forget that concert. It was just, and it was that night when I thought, you know, instead of trying to convince 160 people, 160 high school kids to be part of a band, maybe I could just discipline myself in a practice room and maybe try to get something like that. So I was very stimulated to work. I transferred to University of Southern California, where I studied with Tommy Johnson, who's the most heard tuba player on the planet. If you've ever heard Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you've heard Tommy Johnson.
Yeah.
Soon thereafter, I won a job playing in the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra in 1975, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, and then the Utah Symphony, and then the St. Louis Symphony, and then Chicago, and then the LA Philharmonic opened up. I thought, oh, I can go home and not have to buy a map, because, you know, I knew the place, because every place I had to go, I had to buy a map. You know, I've got a file cabinet full of maps of where I've been, you know. So anyway, so I joined the LA Philharmonic and stayed there for a year, and thought, you know, yeah, it's nice to have hobbies and nice weather and stuff, but Chicago is, you know, that's the orchestra.
That became your musical home.
Yeah, so I went back, and that was it.
That's so
30
neat.
years ago, plus years ago.
Wow, amazing. You probably have some questions for these wonderful tuba players. I know we still have plenty of time, and there's a lot more to talk about with the program too, of course. There's other pieces, but while we have these wonderful tuba musicians, give us some questions, yeah.
I want to know how you travel.
Yeah.
How do you travel with something from here to Chicago or wherever?
It's well, I used to put my tubas, I used to put them in a case, make sure they were well protected, and, you know, send them as luggage through the air. Well, there are a lot of people who work on the tarmac that consider large boxes, large crates, large suitcases a challenge. And they try to bust these things up. I ruined a horn. One of my horns was ruined.
Oh, you're
Yeah. In fact, it's a recording of Petrushka that Schulte conducted in November, and 1 month later, that instrument was destroyed by American Airlines.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And that piece has a big tuba solo.
It has a big tuba solo. So anyway, the way I got here, I buy a seat for my instruments. Yeah.
So
It's just-
instead of
it's
the
just-
big, bulky, strong wooden case, you have a soft.
I have a soft case, which is in that corner right next to the trash can. It's a soft case, and and I have to go through TSA, and I have to, I have to show them that I've not hidden any drugs inside, or, now, the interesting thing is, if you use polish, like silver polish, there is a component in silver polish that is used in bomb making. So I've had a couple interesting encounters with people at TSA and trying to explain, well, it's not really a bomb, unless of course you look at the reviews. To make a note, that's a good one. That's something. So yeah, it's turned into, but I've had to take slides out and everything, and of course when you get on the plane itself, you're limited to being behind a bulkhead and in a window seat. That's where this thing has to go. Well, there's fewer and fewer bulkheads.
Yeah.
So now they've just recently changed the rules, as I just found out on this last trip when I came here, that you don't have to be behind a bulkhead, but that instrument has to be in a window seat, so it doesn't obstruct people from
Oh, from
escaping.
getting out, yeah, right. Wow, interesting. And then, when you're on tour with the Chicago Symphony, you travel internationally. How many of those 100-some musicians on tour have to have their instrument on the plane with them? Every violinist probably, and then you and every cellist. How does that work?
Fortunately, the Chicago Symphony is, we do have very highly structured cases and trunks, and they're all taken very well care of. They're shrink wrapped and everything, so there's these big trunks that hold all the instruments, although some people insist on bringing their own instruments along. And unless we need for a special event ahead of time, before the instruments are released when we're at our next venue, they all travel together. And I don't know exactly, but it's probably around 13 tons of stuff on the show, because this includes wardrobe trunks and the instruments,
Timpani
and
drums, perhaps?
timpani, the conductor's podium, special chairs for people who have back issues and special needs. And so our stage crew is amazing.
That is amazing.
They are. You never know that anything's amiss. Everything is right there.
They're incredible.
They are incredible.
I can tell from the concerts I've seen at Symphony Hall in Chicago, this stage crew is amazing, and as is, of course, the orchestra. Alan, tell us about transportation from your standpoint. Did you have to get a certain size car? When you were looking for a car, what was that like? Because you traveled all these miles between North Denver to Casper. Tell us about that.
Hatchback is vitally important.
Oh, hatchback.
So I use a small SUV car. When I first was starting in Laramie, my sister was still living here. She made me promise that I would get a different car. Something that was big and something that had all-wheel drive to get back and forth over Sherman Hill to get back and forth to Laramie. But for me, it's mostly driving.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of touring, like Gene would do.
That's great.
But it's when there's two instruments at once.
I was going to ask you about that,
Okay.
because there are times, like if you take an audition, for instance, you probably have to have 3 instruments, right?
Yeah, you would bring 2 instruments, maybe the muse.
Maybe, yeah.
And I need one more thing to carry, not at all. So it's a struggle. I've had a couple of students recently that wanted to go to graduate school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, I want to go back east. I want to go to Michigan or Ohio or somewhere. How do I do my audition? How do I take 2 tubas on the airplane, or do I drive?
That's a big
For 18
concern.
hours,
Yeah.
Like that. And some of them were fortunate to have very similar instruments available that they could borrow from another graduate student or something like that. So that's fine.
smart. Yeah.
But otherwise, it's find a way to.
Yeah,
load up and
that's amazing. Thank you for your question, Pete. Other questions?
Is there any rhyme or reason in the tuba family and the French horn, the way the tubing curls around and does all that?
Well, the commonality between a tuba and a French horn is that the shape of the tubing is what we call conical. It starts off small and gradually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. As opposed to, say, for instance, a trumpet or a trombone. A trumpet or a trombone basically stays the same diameter throughout until you get to the end, the bell, and then it flares out. So, so that's the similarity between, say, the trumpet and a trombone. As far as the French horn and the tuba are concerned, the basic structure is the structure is, sorry, the structure is the same in that if you push down the second valve, there's a small length of tubing here that's added, and it goes and the pitch goes down a half step. If you push down the first valve, it goes down a whole step, and so it's a little bit deeper sound. It's a little bit longer, and that's the same for both the French horn and the tuba.
I was just wondering about the curving around.
Oh.
Is it a pattern? Does
I
it make
think-
any difference, or is this just aesthetics?
I think it's aesthetics, maybe practicality, because we have to get around and make it ergonomically easier to reach around the instrument. I mean, I'll show you a little bit here.
Yeah, maybe you could play us some. Yeah.
So this tuba is in F. F goes like this. The lowest F I can play. And if I start adding tubing, I can start to go lower than that. Because right now, it's just the open tube. There are no valves depressed. There's no extra tubing that's being added. But if I start to add tubing, by pushing these valves down and opening these buttons down, it opens these valves, and so it gradually goes lower and lower.
Yeah, so it's not always going through all the tubes at once. Yeah.
And you go down from there. Now that's the lowest note on the piano.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Wow, thank
Do you mind playing a little bit of the Schifrin, or perhaps a little Mission Impossible? I know you have some music here. I'm just going to move this out in case you want. Or if you want to play some other piece, maybe you have a favorite piece that you play as you warm up every day, or something like that. Anything.
I'll play a few little things. The opening of the Schifrin goes like this.
And it actually then leads into a beautiful sort of Latin American sort of bossa nova-y feel. It's like the composer, near the end of his life, is remembering his childhood in Argentina, and it has this wonderful Latin flavor in that first movement. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more, maybe a little bit of the jazzy fourth movement or something like that. Would you be willing to do any of that?
I gotta remember how it goes. Sometimes I need the music. There we go. Oh, yes, that. Here's the last movement. That's another interesting, well, it keeps going. So it moves along.
Wonderful, bravo. Now, is there any part of this that you find especially challenging, or something that you had to tell Maestro Schifrin, this is impossible, or something like that? And that often happens with a new piece, right?
Well, we talked a little bit about it at the very bottom of the first page. He has some stuff that's written so fast, and it just goes fast. And I asked Lalo Schifrin if he wouldn't mind if I played a little bit slower. And he was easy. Yeah, go ahead, play a little bit slower. It goes something like this. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. Pick the hardest place in the piece to play for you. You know? Watch him step all over himself. Let's see.
Unbelievable. Well, he knew you could handle it, obviously. He was impressed with you.
Well, we'll find out at the rehearsal.
That's right, he said we'll find out at rehearsal tonight. Other questions for Gene or Alan?
What sparked your interest in steam engines?
Oh, yes, tell us about your
Why are
interest
you a
in
foamer?
Why are
Oh,
you
I'm not
a
a foamer.
train fan? a
Besides you're
foamer?
foaming at the mouth.
Oh, yeah, that's part of it, isn't it? So, well, trains in general, when I was young, probably 5 or 6 years old, at the trailer park, first Saturday of the month, we would have coffee and donut day in Downey. And so I went with my dad to Montebello, California, where there was a bakery, and we could pick up our donuts there. Believe me, I'm going to answer this question. Right next to the bakery was this train line. Well, we had a train line in Downey, but they were little streetcars, and they didn't move more than 15, maybe 20 miles an hour. It was not much more. But out near the bakery, there was this other train line. Well, it happened to be the main line out of the Union Pacific, and when I went there once with my dad to the bakery, the lights went off. Oh, we're going to see a little train go by, and this sound started getting louder and louder and louder. And finally, this streamliner came exploding across the street, and my knees were shaking. So I was hooked from that point on. I always went with my dad to the bakery in hopes of seeing one of these fast trains go by, and I've always been. And eventually, actually, when I was 6 years old, we were actually on that train, on one of those streamliners, heading out east to see relatives. And I remember going past the bakery. And so I'm a hopeless foamer. Hopeless.
Now, you've stayed in close contact with a lot of people at the UP here in Cheyenne. Tell us a little bit about that, and just a little bit about the significance of Cheyenne, because a lot of people here, we understand that we're an important part of train history and the Union Pacific, but from your perspective, what does it mean to come to Cheyenne?
Well, this is
like the Mecca or Ground Zero or something? Mecca?
Yeah. Alan and I went to the steam shop this morning. We got a little tour of the place, and he was coming to Mecca again because back. Let's see. I put out a couple solo CDs of the tuba, playing solo pieces, and I came out here. Must have been in the late 1980s, because I wanted to get a picture of the Northern, the 844, that's there at the steam shop, and I made arrangements through Union Pacific to come out to get the photograph, and so I got to know some of the people who were so involved with the Union Pacific. Steve Lee, who was running the program at the time, Lynn Nystrom, who was one of the guys, and of course got to know Mary Nystrom, and Ron Tapke and Art Lockman, and got to know a lot of these guys. They became personal, people who I got to know, and one of the major people that I got to know was Jim Ehrenberger. He's got to be someone that you kind of know. He's a railroad historian, a great photographer. He's written 50 books. He just donated a whole bunch of things to the American Heritage Center in Laramie, 1,200 boxes of stuff, his 50 books that he's written. He's actually going to be at the concert tomorrow night. I hope we might have a chance to meet him, and he'll be at the reception afterwards. So I hope you have a chance to meet. This guy is probably the #1 railroad photographer on the planet right now. And so it's very personal.
That's so great. And a lot of these folks know Ed Dickens. You can tell us more about him.
Ed Dickens is a genius. He's super organized, super committed, very highly principled, and he's put that steam shop in great shape. It's run like a military institution practically. I mean, he has everybody sign off on every piece of work that they complete, because there's so many moving parts on a steam locomotive. He's extremely well disciplined, and his idea of teamwork it doesn't even go higher. I've run a low brass seminar it's been going on now for close to 15 years, and it's in DeKalb, Illinois, and have guest artists come in and speak and stuff. And I said, okay, we're gonna have Ed Dickens come in. Why have Ed Dickens come into a low brass seminar? You know, it's a place where you learn about tubas and trombones and why have him come in? Because he knows a lot about teamwork. And by far, his Zoom lecture that he gave to us was better than any lecture that we have ever had. Because he was talking in such general terms about correct principles, about living, loving, learning, leaving a legacy. And that's just all about what he is and what he's done, and you just making a difference. That's what he's all about. So that's what's running the STEAM program. And now Cheyenne is going to be the focal point, starting in the late spring and the summer, when they take the big boy out east for the celebration of the 250th anniversary. This is going to be big stuff for everybody that lives in this town, because when people start tripping over their bottom lips when they see this locomotive go by, they're going to wonder, where did this come from? How did this come about? This locomotive that hadn't been seen for 70 years. Who put it together? Why, it's going to come right down to Cheyenne. You're going to see.
It's going to be exciting to see the 4014 as you're talking about.
The
big
4014.
across the country.
Yeah, it's going to be big stuff. So I'm excited for what's about to happen in this town, because there's going to be some real focus. It certainly should be.
Yeah.
Certainly should be.
It's very fortuitous that when you reached out to us to see if you could perform this Schifrin with us as a sort of warm-up to doing it before you played it with Muti in Chicago, and we were already booked up that season and we couldn't fit you in. But now that you're here at this time, it was like it was meant to be because of what's going on with our country and the railroad and the 250th. And it just ties in so perfectly. Thank you, Gene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the locomotive is first heading out west. At the end of this month, it's gonna get to mile point 0.0 on the Transcontinental Railroad in Roseville, California, and then coming back here, doing a quick re-up and getting everything ready again, and then it starts heading east. And I think the schedule is gonna be out in another week and a half, maybe 2 weeks from Omaha. But it's gonna go into some very big places, like Philadelphia on a major day.
Oh. I was wondering if it's going to be in the nation's capital on that day. I wasn't sure.
Well,
Philadelphia is probably more appropriate.
this meeting never happened.
No, it's like Mission Impossible. This tape will destroy, self-destruct. Well, thank you both so much. I know we're running out of time. I didn't get to talk very much about Bernstein and more about the Zwillik and stuff like that. You know, there is a pre-concert lecture before the concert tomorrow night from 7 to 7. No, from 6:30 to 7. Is that right? Yeah, 6:30 to 7. And you're all welcome to that. I'll dig in more into the other pieces at that. And I hope you'll forgive me for just wanting to geek out with these wonderful musicians and friends about the tuba, about the trains, about the concerto, about their experience. And we should be very grateful for the quiet, not quiet, but the people at the bottom of the brass section and the bottom of the orchestra that support it all. And they do it with dignity and grace, and And yeah, I'm very grateful for what you both bring. So thank you all.
Thank you.